That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The wind cut through the Virginia pines like a knife, carrying the faint scent of pine resin and diesel from the idling Humvees. At Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, dawn broke over the training grounds with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Hale stood at attention, his boots planted firmly in the frost-kissed gravel. His uniform, crisp digital camouflage, sleeves rolled to the elbows, hung on his frame like a second skin, the trident pin on his chest catching the first grey light. Beside him, Rex, his Belgian Malinois partner, sat rigid, ears pricked forward, black eyes scanning the horizon with unerring focus. The dog's harness gleamed under a thin layer of dew, the leather worn smooth from years of shared patrols. "Platoon! Attention!" The command echoed from Master Chief Ramirez, his voice gravelly from decades of barked orders. The line of SEAL candidates snapped to, heels clicking in unison. Marcus felt the familiar rhythm pulse through the ranks, the subtle shift of weight, the controlled breaths, the weight of eyes from the officer's platform. This was DevGru's pre-holiday drill, a final shakeout before the base quieted for Christmas leave. No room for sentiment here, only discipline, the kind forged in the heat of forgotten deployments. Marcus had run these evolutions 100 times. But today, Rex's flank pressed against his leg, a silent anchor amid the formality. The Master Chief paced the front, his boots crunching gravel. "Hale, your team takes point on the perimeter sweep. Rex leads, no deviations." Marcus nodded once, sharp and economical. "Aye, Chief." He gave the hand signal, low and fluid, and Rex rose without a sound, muscles coiling like springs. They moved out first, the dog ranging ahead in a controlled trot, nose to the ground, sifting scents invisible to human senses. The platoon followed, rifles slung low, the air humming with the low chatter of encrypted radios. Marcus's mind drifted briefly to the routine that awaited after, the drive north, the quiet cemetery, the tradition he'd kept for 5 years. But focus snapped back as Rex stiffened, alerting on a mock IED buried in the mock village ahead. Good boy. The drill proceeded flawlessly. Clear, secure, report. By midday, the base settled into its holiday hush. Hangar doors groaned shut, and the mess hall filled with the aroma of reheated turkey and coffee. Marcus knelt in the kennel block, brushing Rex's coat with steady strokes. The dog's fur was coarse, still carrying the chill from the fields. "You did good out there," Marcus murmured, his voice low, meant only for them. Rex leaned into the touch, a soft huff escaping his muzzle, their language honed in the sands of Helmand Province. Marcus had been 28 then, fresh from Budès, when Rex joined his squad. The dog had saved his life twice, once from an ambush, nose catching the tripwire's tang, once in a dust storm, leading them back to exfil when compasses failed. But it was the third time, the one that didn't make the after-action reports, that bound them unbreakable. That deployment, their platoon had lost Specialist Ellis, a young E4 from reconnaissance, IED in a market square, the blast silent under the roar of rotors evacuating the wounded. Marcus had carried Ellis's pack out, felt the weight of dog tags clinking inside. Rex had refused to leave the site, whining low until Marcus dragged him away. Back stateside, when the official story glossed over the chaos, the overlooked intel, the command push for speed over caution, Marcus started the visits. Every Christmas Eve, he'd drive to Arlington, Rex in the passenger seat, head out the window against the winter wind. They'd stand at Ellis's marker, a simple white stone etched with rank and valor. No speeches, just silence, the dog's paw on the frozen grass. It was Marcus's quiet defiance, a way to honor what the system sometimes buried under procedure. The base chaplain had noticed once, during a routine counseling check. Traditions like that. They keep us human, Hale, but don't let it interfere. Marcus had saluted, said nothing. Interference wasn't the point. Erasure was. In the SEAL ethos, loyalty wasn't just to the team, it was to the ghosts who shaped it. Rex sensed it too, always more alert on those drives, as if guarding a perimeter that never ended. That Christmas, the drive felt heavier. Snow flurries dusted the windshield as Marcus navigated the beltway, Rex's harness clipped to the seatbelt. The radio hummed with static-laced holiday broadcasts, but he kept it low, focused on the road's black ribbon. Arlington's gates loomed under sodium lights, the cemetery a vast, orderly grid of white stones marching into the dark. Marcus parked near Section 60, the newer markers for Iraq and Afghanistan vets. He clipped Rex's leash, standard protocol even here, and they walked the path, boots muffled on the snow-damp grass. The air smelled of earth and evergreens, from wreaths laid by families. At Ellis's grave, Marcus stopped, removing his cover and tucking it under his arm. Rex sat immediately, nose twitching at the cold stone. SP4, J. Ellis, 1987-2012. Beloved son. Marcus placed a small pine bough from the base lot, his gloved hand lingering. 5 years, and the ache hadn't dulled. The what-ifs of that day, the order to push forward despite the signs. Rex whined softly, pressing his head against Marcus's knee. Yeah, buddy, I know. The cemetery was quiet, save for distant traffic and the wind whispering through the headstones. Families milled nearby, some with children bundled in coats, placing flowers at other sites. Then a sound, small feet crunching snow, hurried and uneven. Marcus turned as a girl, no more than 10, burst from behind a neighboring marker. Her coat was too big, hood fallen back, dark hair whipping in the breeze. She skidded to a halt 10 feet away, eyes wide on Rex. Is that your dog? Does he bite? Her voice was breathless, edged with something sharper than fear. Curiosity, maybe desperation. Marcus straightened, hand firm on the leash. He's a working dog, miss. Train not to unless commanded. Rex stayed put, tail thumping once, sensing no threat. The girl edged closer, glancing at the grave. My dad, he was like you. Army. This is his spot too. She pointed to the stone beside Ellis's, a marker for a sergeant, fresh poinsettias wilting in the cold. Marcus nodded, protocol kicking in, polite, distant. I'm sorry for your loss. But she didn't stop, kneeling suddenly to peer at Rex's tags. What's his name? Does he remember things like smells from before? Her questions tumbled out, raw and unfiltered, cutting through the silence like a radio squawk. Marcus felt Rex shift, alert to her energy. This wasn't routine. Not anymore. In that moment, under the cemetery's watchful arches, Marcus realized the visits had never been just for Ellis. They were a vigil, a stand against forgetting, and now this girl, eyes like Ellis's, haunted and searching, was pulling at the edges of it. Duty said keep walking, honor the dead in peace. But conscience, that quiet pull Rex always sensed first, whispered otherwise. The wind picked up, carrying the faint jingle of distant bells, as the first real test of the season began. Marcus held the leash steady, his posture unchanging as the girl crouched lower, her small hands hovering near Rex's muzzle without touching. The dog's ears flicked forward, assessing, but he remained seated, a statue of controlled patience, snowflakes caught in her lashes, melting into tiny tracks down her cheeks. Up close, she looked smaller than her voice suggested. Faded jeans under the oversized coat, sneakers caked with cemetery mud. No adult in sight, just the vast rows of markers stretching into the twilight. His name's Rex, Marcus said, voice even. The words clipped like a status report. He remembers scents better than we do. That's his job. Protocol for civilians, especially children. Answer briefly. Maintain distance. Arlington wasn't a playground. It was hallowed ground, patrolled by silent sentinels in uniform. But her gaze lingered on the grave beside Ellis's, the one with the wilting poinsettias, Sergeant Daniel Reyes, 1985-2011. The dates hit Marcus like a suppressed memory. Helmand overlap, same rotation cycle. Reyes's unit had crossed paths with theirs once, a hasty handoff of intel at a forward operating base. No names exchanged, just coordinates and nods under the relentless sun. The girl straightened, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I'm Lily. Dad said dogs like him could smell lies, or fear. He told stories about ones in the desert, saving guys from bombs. She glanced at Marcus's trident pin, then back to Rex. Were you there? With my dad? Her tone wasn't demanding. It was a plea wrapped in facts, the kind a child pieces together from faded photos and half-told tales. Marcus paused, the cold seeping through his gloves. Duty pulled one way. Navy regs on operational security. Even in death. No details, no connections that could unravel classified threads. But the wind carried the faint scent of pine from the wreaths, mingling with the earthy damp of the graves, and Rex's steady breathing grounded him. I was in country around that time, he replied carefully. SEAL team, we supported recon units like your father's. It was truth, stripped bare. Reyes's marker bore the combat infantryman badge etched in stone, a testament to the grind Marcus knew too well. Patrols that blurred into nights, orders that weighed heavier than gear. Lily's eyes brightened, a flicker against the gathering dusk. He never came home. Mom says it was an accident, but his letters. He wrote about bad calls, like pushing too far without backup. She kicked at a clump of snow, her breath fogging the air. They gave her a flag, but no answers, just line of duty. The words hung there, raw as exposed wire. Marcus felt the shift, a civilian's grief brushing against the institutional veil. In the teams, after-actions were sanitized, lessons learned, no blame assigned, but families like hers carried the unredacted version, the what-ifs that festered. Rex whined low, nudging Marcus's boot, sensing the tension coiling in his handler's stance. The dog had that instinct, honed from countless ops where human doubt could turn fatal. Marcus knelt slowly, eye level with Lily, keeping Rex between them like a buffer. Your dad served with honor, he said. That's what matters in the end. But inside, the old fracture reopened. Ellis's death had echoed the same. A command decision to accelerate the sweep, intel gaps glossed over in the debrief. Marcus had signed off on the report, loyalty to the chain overriding the questions. Now, here was Lily, a mirror of the silence he'd enforced. She reached out tentatively, palm up, and Rex sniffed it once, his tail giving a single, permissive wag. Can he sit by Dad's stone, just for a minute? Lily asked, voice softening. Marcus hesitated. Base policy for working dogs was clear. No fraternizing off duty, no emotional attachments that blurred lines. Rex was property of the Navy, his deployments logged like ammunition. But the cemetery's quiet amplified her request, the sodium lights casting long shadows over the ranks of the fallen. Denying it felt like another layer of procedure over pain. Aye, Marcus murmured, more to himself than her. He signaled Rex with a subtle hand gesture. Easy, companion, and the dog padded forward, settling beside Reyes's marker with a soft sigh. His nose touched the stone, as if cataloguing the sense of earth and memory. Lily knelt too, her hand resting lightly on Rex's flank, the first real contact. Thanks, she whispered. Mom's inside the visitor center. She doesn't come out here much. Says it's too cold. But Lily's presence said otherwise, defiance in a child's resolve, echoing Marcus's own annual vigil. As they sat in silence, the distant hum of a maintenance truck rumbled through the grounds, headlights sweeping the paths. Marcus's radio crackled faintly in his pocket. Base check-in, routine even on leave. He ignored it for now, watching Lily trace the letters on her father's stone. He mentioned a dog once, said it was the only one who didn't lie about the fear. Her words landed like shrapnel, precise and piercing. Marcus thought of Helmand again, the dust-choked air, Rex's alerts pulling them from harm, and the unspoken costs Reyes's unit must have borne in parallel. Institutional justice promised closure through honors and pensions, but it rarely mended the fractures. The wind picked up, rattling the plastic on nearby wreaths. Rex lifted his head, ears perked toward the visitor center path. Footsteps approached, measured, adult. A woman emerged from the shadows, coat bundled tight, her face etched with the weariness of repeated holidays. "Lily!" she called, voice sharp but laced with worry. The girl stood quickly, brushing snow from her knees. "I was just talking." The woman, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, neared, eyes flicking from Lily to Marcus and Rex. Recognition dawned slowly, then sharpened. "You're military," she said, not a question. Marcus rose, saluting crisply despite the civilian setting. "Petty Officer Hale, ma'am, with my partner." He nodded to Rex, who returned to heel without command. She studied him, then the graves. "Daniels and Ellis? You knew them?" Her tone held no accusation, just the quiet probe of someone piecing a puzzle long unsolved. Marcus nodded once. "Served alongside. Paid respects." The admission felt like crossing a line, protocol bent but not broken. Lily tugged her mother's sleeve. "Rex is like the one Dad wrote about. He sat with him." The woman's expression softened, a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Thank you," she said to Marcus. "It's more than we get most days." They turned to leave, Lily waving once to Rex, who watched them go with unwavering focus. Marcus clipped the leash tighter, the weight of the encounter settling like frost on his shoulders. Back at the truck, engine warming against the chill, Rex curled in the seat, head on his paws. The drive south blurred under streetlights, but Marcus's mind replayed the exchange. Duty had kept him silent for years, reports filed, traditions private, but Lily's questions, her mother's unspoken plea, stirred the moral undercurrent he'd buried. Rex's steady breathing filled the cab, a reminder of loyalties that transcended orders. Christmas Eve wasn't over, and neither was the test. The chain of command extended beyond the base, into the quiet spaces where conscience demanded a stand. The days following Christmas blurred into the rigid cadence of post-holiday routine at Little Creek. Marcus reported back early, skipping the extended leave most took, his truck pulling into the kennel lot under a slate-grey sky. The base hummed with subdued energy, hangar doors clanging shut, the distant thump of rotor blades from a helo test flight. Rex leaped from the cab, shaking off the road dust, his paws silent on the concrete as Marcus led him through the chain-link gate. The kennel master, a grizzled E6 named Kowalski, nodded from the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Hale, thought you'd stretch it out. Vet checks at 800 tomorrow. Rex's dew claws looking raw from that snow." "Aye, Chief," Marcus replied, voice steady as he unclipped the leash. The air inside the block carried the familiar tang of disinfectant and wet fur. Rows of kennels, lined with stainless steel bowls and neatly folded blankets. Rex trotted to his run, turning once to meet Marcus's gaze before settling on the mat. It was protocol, separate quarters, no attachments that softened the edge. But Marcus lingered a beat longer than usual, his hand on the gate, replaying the cemetery encounter. Lily's questions had lodged like grit in a rifle barrel, innocent, yet probing the seams of what he'd sealed away. By week's end, the anomaly surfaced in a routine briefing. The DevGru ready room, a windowless bunker of folding chairs and tactical maps pinned to cinder-block walls, filled with the low murmur of operators nursing coffee from insulated mugs. Master Chief Ramirez stood at the front, his frame casting a shadow over the projector screen. "Holiday reports," he began, the words clipped like a radio transmission. "Most clean. Hail, yours flagged an addendum from Arlington Security. Civilian interaction, unlogged working dog exposure." Marcus sat ramrod straight in the third row, his BDUs starched, the faint scent of gun oil from morning qualls clinging to his sleeves. The room's fluorescent hum underscored the chief's gaze, sweeping the ranks before locking on him. "Explain." "Sir," Marcus said, rising without hesitation, "post-visit protocol. A child approached during graveside honors. No breach. Rex remained under control. Interaction minimal, ma'am." He kept it factual, eyes forward, the chain of command a steel thread pulling taut. Ramirez's expression didn't shift, but the room's air thickened, subtle glances from teammates like Gunnery Sergeant Patel across the aisle. "Minimal," Ramirez echoed, tapping the tablet in his hand. "Security log says otherwise. Mother filed a commendation, praised the dog's comfort at Sergeant Reyes's marker. Reyes, ring any bells?" The name landed with precision, a suppressed round. Marcus's pulse steadied. He knew the regs inside out. Working dogs weren't therapy props, they were assets, their logs scrutinized for liability. One off-script moment could cascade: insurance claims, media whispers, questions about operational readiness. "Aye, Chief. Reyes's unit overlapped ours in Helmand, 2011. Casual support. The girl, daughter, mentioned letters. No details exchanged." Truth, pared to the bone. But inside, the dilemma coiled. Loyalty to the team meant silence on the ops' rough edges. The decisions that sent Reyes's recon ahead without full overwatch. Ellis's death had been the mirror, pushed patrols, intel shortcuts buried in after-actions. Sharing even a fraction now risked unraveling that veil, exposing fractures the institution patched with procedure. Ramirez paced once, boots echoing on the linoleum. "This isn't a petting zoo, Hale. You're not some base morale officer. Log it properly. Incident report by 1600. And keep Rex on leash detail only until cleared." The chief's tone held no malice, just the weight of command. Protect the unit, contain the variables. Dismissal came with a nod, the briefing shifting to range schedules. But Marcus felt the eyes linger as he sat. Patel leaned in after, voice low under the projector whine. "Reyes? That the fob handoff. Kids got stones bringing it up." Marcus nodded once, jaw set. "Families got questions. We don't." It was the ethos. Compartmentalize, move on. But driving back to quarters that evening, the base's floodlights casting long shadows over the asphalt, Rex's empty kennel loomed in his mind. The dog had sensed Lily's grief first, that unerring nose cutting through protocol like a pathfinder. Denying her that moment would have been obedience. Granting it, a quiet stand for the human cost the reports omitted. The test escalated 2 days later in the vet clinic's sterile bay. Dr. Harlan, a civilian contractor with wire-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense drawl, ran Rex through the standard. Vitals, joint checks, the click of calipers on pause. Marcus stood by, arms crossed, the room smelling of antiseptic and kibble. "Due clause minor," Harlan said, scribbling notes, "but I hear you've got a side gig, cemetery therapy." The question came casual, but Marcus's posture stiffened. Word traveled fast in the vet network. Arlington's logs fed into base channels. "Not therapy, Doc. Respect." Harlan paused, stethoscope dangling. "Reyes's widow called the hotline. Wants to know if you'll visit again. Formal, with the dog. Says it helped the girl sleep." The request hit like an unbriefed insertion. Civilian outreach. Blurring lines between duty and personal vigil. Regs forbade it. Working animals on official ops only. No endorsements that implied Navy sanction. Marcus's mind raced through the chain. Report up. Get denied. Let the family's plea fade into bureaucracy. Outside, under the clinic's awning, rain pattered on the tin roof, turning the gravel to mud. Rex shook himself dry beside Marcus, fur beading with droplets. His eyes fixed upward as if reading the handler's tension. The moral pull sharpened. Obey the order to log and forget, preserve the team's airtight facade, or respond. Honor the bond Rex embodied, the loyalty that outlasted deployments. Reyes's death, like Ellis's, stemmed from the same institutional blind spot. Speed over caution, lives tallied in metrics, silence protected careers. Truth, even whispered, could spark the reform buried in every after-action. That night, in the dim glow of his barracks room, Marcus drafted the report on his laptop, the cursor blinking like a targeting reticle. Fingers hovered over submit. The base outside quieted, wind whistling through the vents carrying the faint bark of distant K9s. Rex's paw scratched at the door. Off-hours visit. Against habit but needed. The dog padded in, nose bumping Marcus's knee, a silent prompt. Duty versus conscience, the SEAL's eternal patrol. By dawn, the decision crystallized. Marcus routed the report through Ramirez first, attaching a memo. Request for guided civilian contact, framed as morale extension. It was defiance wrapped in protocol, a test of the system's flexibility. The chief's response pinged mid-morning. Approved, conditional. No media. Keep it tight. But as Marcus clipped Rex's harness for the follow-up, Lily's face resurfaced, her questions a beacon in the fog of orders. The reckoning loomed, public now, rippling through channels that valued silence above all. Words spread subtly, whispers in the mess hall, a nod from the chaplain during chapel rounds. Reyes's widow had shared the story in a support group email, anonymized but potent. A SEAL and his dog bridging the gap to the unspoken. Marcus felt the weight, not as burden, but as the quiet forge of integrity. Rex trotted beside him toward the gate, ears alert to the unseen, their bond the unyielding core amid the gathering scrutiny. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The approval from Master Chief Ramirez hung like a provisional ceasefire. But Marcus knew the terrain ahead. Scrutiny from higher echelons, the kind that mapped every step for deviations. He drove north again under a low January overcast, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel, a grey expanse below. Rex secured in the back with his travel crate bolted firm. The widow's request, formalized through the base family support liaison, specified a neutral site. The Arlington Visitor Center's overflow lot, away from the graves but close enough for symbolism. No press, no fanfare, just a controlled encounter to provide closure, as the memo phrased it. Marcus's hands gripped the wheel at 10 and 2. The hum of tires on asphalt, syncing with Rex's even breaths from the rear. The center's parking area was sparse midweek, sodium lamps flickering against the chill, despite the midday hour. Marcus pulled into a marked slot, killing the engine with a twist that echoed in the cab. He suited up methodically, cover secured, leash uncoiled, Rex's harness checked for fit. The dog exited first. Paws hitting pavement with a soft click, nose immediately questing the air. Damp concrete, exhaust from a distant shuttle bus, the faint rot of winter leaves. "Easy," Marcus murmured, the command a reflex. They waited by the truck, posture alert but unobtrusive, as protocol dictated for off-base ops. The widow arrived in a compact sedan, Lily in the passenger seat, her face pressed to the window until the door swung open. Mrs. Reyes, Elena from the liaison notes, stepped out first, her wool coat buttoned tight, a folder tucked under one arm. Lily followed, clutching a small wreath of artificial holly, her boots scuffing the asphalt. No hugs, no overt warmth. Elena extended a hand, grip firm. "Petty Officer Hale, thank you for this." The group counselor thought it might help. Her voice carried the measured tone of someone versed in VA briefings, eyes flicking to Rex with a mix of wariness and hope. "Aye, ma'am," Marcus replied, saluting briefly before signaling Rex to sit. "Limited time, base guidelines." The words set the boundaries, but Lily's approach softened them. She knelt at a respectful distance, offering the wreath like a salute. "For Dad and Ellis, I made it in art class." Rex's tail thumped once against the ground, his gaze steady on her extended hand. Marcus nodded permission, and the dog sniffed the greenery, a low huff escaping as he accepted the gesture. The moment stretched, sensory details sharpening, the wreath's plastic scent cutting the bay's briny undertow, Elena's quiet intake of breath, Lily's fingers trembling lightly on Rex's collar. They talked in fragments, Hellman's heat, the unreliability of SATCOM in dust storms, the way dogs like Rex became the unspoken barometer for trust. Elena shared a letter excerpt, voice low. Daniel's scrawl about a K9 alert that saved his squad during a night patrol, the handler's name redacted but the debt clear. Marcus listened, adding only what regs allowed. Overlapping ops, shared FOB rotations, no blame assigned, no ops details spilled. But Lily's questions pierced deeper. "Why don't they tell us the whole story? Mum says it's classified, but Dad's gone because of it." The girl's words landed flat, echoing off the visitor center's stone facade. Marcus met her eyes, Rex's flank warm against his leg. Classification protects the living, but honor, that's for everyone. It was the closest he'd come to voicing the fracture. The after-action that buried Reyes's unit's warnings, the push for momentum that echoed Ellis's end. Duty demanded compartmentalization. Conscience, now stirred by this family's vigil, urged a bridge. Eleanor placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "We've filed a FOIA request. Years ago, still waiting." Her tone held no bitterness, just the grind of institutional patience. As they wrapped up, wreath placed in the sedan's trunk, a final pat for Rex. The reckoning materialized in a black SUV pulling into the lot. Base security, unmarked but unmistakable, tinted windows, Virginia plates. The door opened, and Lieutenant Commander Ellis, no relation, just coincidence, emerged. Folder in hand, his dress blues sharp under the coat. "Hail," a word. The command was polite, but the eyes scanned the group, logging variables. Elena tensed, gathering Lily toward the car. "We're done here," she said softly, buckling the girl in before driving off with a nod of thanks. The lieutenant waited until the sedan cleared the gate. Command's review board got wind. Widow's email chain hit the wrong inbox. Now it's JAG territory. Marcus stood at ease, leash firm in his fist, Rex alert but silent. The air cooled further, wind whispering through the lot's chain-link perimeter. "Sir?" Ellis flipped open the folder, pages rustling like radio static. "Unsanctioned civilian contact. Potential OPSEC breach. Reyes's file. Red flags from 2011. You were peripheral. But this looks like advocacy." "Not advocacy, sir. Morale extension, per Chief Ramirez." Marcus kept his voice level, facts arrayed like a briefing slide. But inside, the moral tension knotted. The visit had humanized the buried reports, given Lily a tangible link to her father's service. Deny it now, and it became another sanitized log entry. Affirm it, and risk the chain's full weight. Ellis's gaze shifted to Rex. The dog's ears perked toward the lieutenant's boots. The dog's the asset here. If this escalates, he's sidelined. You know the drill. Psych evals. Reassignment. The words landed with procedural finality, the SUV's engine idling like a warning hum. Marcus saluted, crisp and unyielding. "Understood, sir." They parted with coordinates for a formal inquiry, base HQ, 0900 next week. Driving south, the Beltway's traffic a blur of brake lights, Marcus felt the ripple. Whispers turning to official channels. the institution's machinery grinding toward accountability. Rex shifted in the crate, a soft whine cutting the dashboard's glow. Loyalty, their shared code, now tested publicly, not in the field, but in the quiet bureaucracy of justice. Back at Little Creek, the inquiry unfolded in a conference room stripped to essentials. Long oak table, flags in the corner, the faint scent of polished brass and stale coffee. Ramirez flanked Marcus, stone-faced, as the JAG officer, a sharp-eyed 04 named Vargas, led the probe. "Walk us through the initial contact," she said, recorder whirring. Marcus recounted it methodically. The cemetery approach, Rex's controlled response, no details exchanged. Witnesses corroborated via Arlington logs. Elena's commendation filed as Exhibit A. Vargas leaned forward, pen tapping. "And the Reyes overlap? Your memo implies knowledge of operational lapses." The room's air thickened, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Marcus met her gaze, posture unwavering. Peripheral ma'am, shared sector. After actions were standard, lessons integrated. Truth veiled the lapses, the rushed intel, the unsupported push had cost lives, but admitting them here would indict the chain, not just him. Ramirez interjected, voice gravel. Hale's actions honored the ethos. No breach. The board deliberated in sidebar, murmurs like encrypted chatter. Verdict came measured. No formal reprimand, but a directive. Structured outreach program for K9 handlers, piloted under supervision. Marcus's vigil, once private, now institutionalized. A bridge for families, Rex as emblem. It wasn't redemption yet, but reform's first fracture, conscience etching into procedure. As they filed out, Ramirez clapped his shoulder once. "You stood, Hale. That's the line." Outside, rain slicked the quad. Rex waiting in the kennel run, fur damp but eyes bright. The public eye had turned, not as spectacle but as quiet catalyst. Lily's story, anonymized in reports, sparking memos up the ladder. Duty and morality converged, the SEAL's path refined by the weight of what he'd chosen to remember. The months unfurled like a standard-issue deployment calendar, each square marked with the steady grind of evolutions and evaluations. At Little Creek, the K9 outreach pilot took root in the base's Family Readiness Center, a squat building of beige brick overlooking the marshy fringes of the Lynnhaven River. Marcus arrived each Thursday at 1600 sharp, Rex at heel, the dog's paws clicking softly on the linoleum as they entered the briefing room, repurposed for sessions. The air carried the faint brine from the inlet, mingling with the scent of fresh coffee from the urn and the subtle must of stacked folding chairs. No fanfare, just a sign-up sheet on the door, circulated through VA networks and widow support groups. The first session drew a handful, spouses with hollowed eyes, children clutching dog-eared photos, the quiet weight of unanswered questions hanging like humidity before a storm. Marcus positioned Rex in the center, harness secure, his commands crisp and minimal. "He's trained for focus," he'd explain, voice level as he demonstrated a basic alert. Rex's nose twitching toward a planted scent sample, tail rigid. The families watched, some nodding, others leaning in as Lily did months before. Elena Reyes attended the inaugural, Lily beside her, the girl's sketchpad open to a drawing of a dog at a gravesite, lines precise despite the pencil smudges. "Start with what you remember," Marcus prompted during one circle, the group's murmurs rising like radio static. A widow from a Marine recon unit shared fragments of her husband's last patrol. Dust devils in Kandahar, a K9's bark pulling the squad from an overlooked cache. Marcus listened without interjecting, Rex's steady presence anchoring the room. No classified spills, just echoes of shared service, the institutional veil lifted enough to let light through without crumbling the structure. Lily raised her hand once, voice steady. Dad's letters mentioned a seal dog that smelled the fear before the fight. Was that Rex? Marcus met her gaze, the fluorescent hum underscoring the pause. Dogs like him sense what's unspoken. That's their loyalty. Word of the program filtered upward through channels Marcus rarely saw. JAG memos stamped approved. A commendation brief from the Admiral's staff citing enhanced family resilience metrics. Ramirez pulled him aside after a range day, the chief's boots grinding gravel near the ammo hut, the distant crack of suppressed fire punctuating the air. "You're not just handling a dog anymore, Hale. This is doctrine now. Pilots in Norfolk, maybe Pendleton next." The chief's tone held approval, rare as a clear exfil in monsoon season. Marcus saluted, the trident on his chest catching the late sun. "Aye, Chief, keeps the ethos intact." But the reform's edges cut both ways. In private moments, Marcus felt the cost. The vigil at Ellis's grave, once solitary, now shared with rotating families under supervised slots. Christmas approached again, the base festooned with subdued wreaths on hangar doors, the mess hall's holiday menu, a brief respite from MRE nostalgia. He drove to Arlington on the eve, Rex in the passenger seat, the windshield wipers sweeping away flurries that dusted the beltway like static on a scope. The cemetery gates stood open, sodium lights pooling on the snow-damp paths, the air crisp with pine from fresh placements. At Ellis's marker, Marcus knelt, placing the traditional bow, Rex settling beside him with a soft exhale. No girl this time, no interruption. Just the wind sifting through the stones, carrying the faint jingle of tags from a nearby veteran's honor guard drill. But Lily's influence lingered. A small card leaned against the stone, left by Eleanor. For the handler who remembered, Reyes family. Marcus traced the words with a gloved finger, the paper chilled and unyielding. Rex nudged his elbow, nose warm against the fabric, as if affirming the ripple. Back stateside, the program's legacy expanded. Marcus mentored a new handler, Petty Officer Ruiz, during a joint exercise at Dam Neck, Rex ranging ahead on a simulated breach, the younger SEAL shadowing with his own Malinois Kira. "It's not just alerts," Marcus said over the rotor wash of a hovering Black Hawk, the salt spray stinging their faces. "It's the quiet stands, the ones that honor the full team, living or not." Ruiz nodded, eyes on the dog's synchronized trots across the dune grass, the bond between handler and K9, a mirror to the one Marcus had forged in Hellman's shadows. The public reckoning came softly. In a base newsletter profile, anonymous, framed as K9 Morale Initiative, circulated to congressional liaisons. No names, but the story's core endured. A single encounter at a grave, sparking a protocol that wove conscience into the chain of command. Families wrote in, their letters stacking in Marcus's inbox like after-action supplements. Gratitude for the structure, the dog that made the abstract tangible. Lily sent a drawing postmarked from a Virginia suburb, Rex and Ellis's stone under a Christmas tree, a SEAL silhouette standing guard. One evening, as the pilot wrapped its first year, Marcus walked Rex along the base's perimeter trail, the James River lapping at the bulkhead below, fireflies flickering in the humid dusk. The dog's pace matched his, unhurried, the leash a loose loop between them. No words needed. Rex's flank brushed his leg, a silent testament to loyalties that bent but never broke the system. Marcus had started as a visitor to the dead, bound by private defiance. Now he stood as a symbol, integrity's quiet enforcer, proving that moral courage could reform without shattering the ranks. In the end, the institution learned not through upheaval, but through the steady paw of a dog on frozen ground. Loyalty's legacy, etched in procedure and memory alike. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of Every Christmas. The SEAL and his dog visited the same grave until the girl came running toward them. See you in the next one.